Everyone loves to complicate and overcomplicate marketing and running ads, but it's really not that difficult. So what I'm going to break down in this video today is how I scale ads up and down to make them most efficient to get our best possible cost per lead or cost per acquisition. And it works for any type of ad. You can scale an ad vertically or you can scale an ad horizontally. Vertically is when you basically take the same ad and you're increasing the budget. So you're rising it up. So you're scaling that same ad or that same ad set or the same campaign vertically. And that is the simplest way to do it. But there's also scaling horizontally, which others don't talk about as much, but you can scale horizontally by creating new campaigns, new ad sets, new audiences, different types of budgeting. And by doing that, you're still adding more money into your overall Facebook ads platform, but it's not any specific campaign ad set or ad that's going vertical. So that's what we call horizontal scaling. So the first one I want to talk to you about is the duplication method. Okay, so with the duplication method, essentially all you're doing is when your ad is performing well, you're going to duplicate that ad and you're going to increase the budget. Let's say you start at $25 a day and you're ready to scale it up, but you want to go to $100 a day. Let's say like you want to make a big jump. You would just duplicate, increase the budget, go up to 100 to 200, 300, whatever. And there's pros and cons to this. So the pro is that you can scale very fast. You can go from $10 a day to $100 a day in a single day. I don't typically recommend doing this because the big con in doing it this way is that if it breaks, once you go to $100 a day or your cost per lead is just triple, you don't know at what point it broke. You don't know if it broke at $50 a day, 20, 75, etc. So while you can scale faster, you have that con of not being sure exactly where it broke. So you have to continue, duplicate, decrease, duplicate until you understand where it broke at. So you can kind of see this here, every single day, if you have a desirable CPL or CPA, if it's desirable, yes, you duplicate and go big. If it's not, you duplicate and drop big. The percent scaling method. So this is my personal favorite. I feel like it's the most sustainable. It's the most efficient, right? That's the pros. The cons of it is a little slower. If you start out at $25 a day and you only increase your budget by 20%, it's not that much. What is that? That's $5. Now you're going to 30, and then you increase 20, and then you increase 20, etc. So it is a lot slower, but I find it's more efficient, and you can actually move pretty quickly, scaling 20% per day or per couple of days. So something I do want to point out is that there's no specific number of days you should wait while you're going through this process. It really just depends on how quickly you want to scale up and whether or not you're targeting CPL or CPA. If you're targeting CPA, there is a delay. It does take a little longer to get that metric. So I wouldn't recommend recycling through this loop every single day. But also if you have a lower risk tolerance, you do want to wait a little longer in between these things, because the more aggressive you are, the faster it's going to break. And the more risk tolerant you are, the faster you're going to move, the faster things are going to break. So I'm going to say 1 to 3 days or 5 to 10 days, and you can kind of adjust based on what you're seeing, your experience, etc. All right, so let's say you have the most amazing ad campaign running $25 a day, and you decided that you need to scale it vertically. Okay, so we're gonna use the percent scaling method. So at the start of the period, whether it's 1 day, 5 days, or whatever your cycle period is, we're gonna come in and we're gonna look at our ad and we're gonna say, hey, do we have a desirable CPA or CPL? If we do, okay, we're gonna ask ourselves, did we recently drop the budget? If we did not, we're gonna raise the budget by 20%. You can go 10 to 20%. I like to do 20% because it is faster, but I would not recommend going above 20% because even at 20%, you potentially risk resetting the ad. So 20%, I would not go above that for any reason. Okay, but if we come in here and we're looking at our CPL, CPA, and it's not desirable, it's higher than what we want it to be, then we're gonna wait a couple days. Sometimes it just takes a few days to get real data in, especially if this is a brand new ad, or if you've recently adjusted the budget, you just have to give it a couple of days. So give it 2 or 3 days, all right? And then you restart this process. Is it desirable? No. Have you waited 2 or 3 days? No. Okay, we just wait until tomorrow. So we'll repeat this until we get to the point where we waited 2 or 3 days and we're still not getting our desirable metrics. So we're gonna come down here. So whenever you start your campaign, let's say you're at $25 a day, and then that campaign does well and you increase it 20%, you increase it 20%, and you continue to go through this to where now you're spending, let's say $100 a day, $25 a day shouldn't be your absolute minimum. Maybe at that point, you're at 75 a day or 60 a day or something like that, because you'll see that you have to fluctuate your budget up and down sometimes. But we want to constantly know what our absolute minimum is. So in this case, since it's brand new, we'll say our absolute minimum is 25. However, let's say you were spending $500 a day, your absolute minimum may be $400 a day. So if we're not at our absolute minimum, what are we going to do? We're going to drop it 20%. And then we're going to start over from the beginning. We're going to wait till tomorrow or that next cycle period. And we're going to run through the same process again. New day. Is it desirable? Yes or no? Well, the very next day that you decreased your budget by 20%, it may not still be desirable. So we give it a couple days and we wait and see if it does become desirable, because maybe not the next day, but maybe 2 days later, now we're starting to see a desirable metric, and then we're going to follow it down this way. So you wait a couple days. If you're not at KPI, then what are you going to do? You're going to drop it 20% again, and you're going to do this until you get to that absolute minimum. If you get to that minimum, don't drop below it. Just kill it. Just new ad, new creative, start from scratch, whatever you got to do. You don't want to just keep running this thing down and optimizing and wasting money on this ad that is now dead, bringing it all the way down to $0. There are some exceptions. There's some ads that'll last 3, 4, 5, 6 months, 1 year, but those are very rare exceptions. Most ads, even good ads, will die out at 1 to 3 months. So you can't just sit on the same creative forever and ever, or you can't bank on sitting on the same ad forever and ever. It's eventually going to die. So having this minimum and this process gives you permission to kill it and start fresh. All right, so now we're gonna go through the process of, let's say we did drop it, but we're at the point to where we're back to getting a desirable metric. We're gonna come down here. Have we recently dropped the budget? Yes, we did. Okay. If you decrease the budget 20% and now you're getting good metrics, you don't want to instantly increase it the next day. Give it a few days, let it normalize, make sure it's steady before deciding to increase it. If you wait 2 or 3 days, then go ahead and raise it 20% and then start back from the beginning. Look at the metric, determine if it's desirable, yes or no, and follow the process. But if you ended up dropping 2 or 3 times, if you had to drop this 2 or 3 times, and this isn't 2 or 3 times in a row, this is where you've dropped it, it's become desirable, and then it's not, so you drop it and it's desirable and then it's not. If you go through this process a few times, at some point you want to just stay there. You don't want to increase it anymore, you don't want to decrease it anymore, because you've already kind of pushed that limit and got brought back several times. At that point, I always say to just stay there and then optimize the rest. So look at optimizing the landing page or the lead form or the setter or the closer or whatever comes after the lead comes into your system. Look at optimizing those, because more than likely this ad is maxed out. Like I said, ads will naturally die after 1 to 3 months, and a higher budget means more creative testing. So the faster you burn through an ad with a higher budget, the more often you're going to have to create new ads to go along with it. That's just how it is. By following this process here, it makes scaling super simple. It takes all of the decision out of it, because you just let the metrics guide you which direction to go. And you can see over here, even if you want to scale a little faster, you can use a duplication method. You could duplicate and go big. If it breaks, you can then drop it, or you could start your percentage method from there and just drop it 20%, 20%, 20%. I would only recommend that if you have an idea of what budget typically works for your kind of ads and your audience. Otherwise, start with the percent scaling method and stay with that. Because even though it seems slow, if you look right here, day 1, let's say our budget $20, day 2, 24, day 3, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. By day 30, we're up to about $4,000 per day in ad spend. So anywhere between day 1 and day 30, you're going to hit a wall. It might be $150 a day, and that's just 12 days into it. But what this is going to guarantee you is that you're not wasting money on an ad that is dead, and you're not wasting money on an ad that is over optimized or over budgeted and causing your metrics to just skyrocket. So just as a recap, you want to check this every day, every couple of days, perhaps once a week, right? Determine if you're doing CPA or CPL. CPL is the easiest metric because it's right there inside of Facebook. But if you really want to watch cost per acquisition or your CPA, then because there is a delay, give it 7 days, check it every Monday, increase 20% by then. If your budget's low, that's a little harder to do, because then you look at this day by day, and that's actually week by week. You're checking it every single week. So you don't want to take 30 weeks to get up to $4,000 per day if it can be efficient at that level. So you just walk down through this process. Hey, if it's a good metric, then raise it. If it's a bad metric, give it a couple days, drop it. And that's essentially it. on a new ad, you may go 5, 6, 7, 8 days, just increasing the budget each day 20%. And you just continue doing that as long as the metric is desirable and you haven't hit that wall yet. You're just going to continue to increase until you hit that wall. And at that point, get a few days to normalize. If it doesn't normalize after a couple of days, go ahead and drop it. And then once you get to your absolute minimum, kill it. New ad, let's go. But maybe you do drop it and you come back up here. Now it's a good number. All right. Have we recently dropped it? Yeah. Give it a couple of days to normalize. And then we raise it. And then we raise it. And we raise it until it dies or until it drops again. And then you go back and forth until you find that middle ground. And then you just leave it there. You optimize the rest. Squeeze as much juice as you can from the ad. Create new ads. Start looking at scaling horizontally maybe at that point, which we talked about way up here. We can get a new video on that. So yeah, utilizing this approach makes scaling ads infinitely easier. Takes all the decision making out of it. You want your targeting to be as broad as possible, right? So you have a lot of room for your ad to jump around. And once you find something, you have a lot of room for it to then scale and get larger and larger and larger. You have to have an audience size big enough to allow for scaling. All right, guys, so that's all I got. Subscribe, leave a comment. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Let me know what you want to see in the video. I'm breaking down my entire agency over the past 15 years, trying to give you the 80-20 of what actually works and not overcomplicating it like everyone else would love to do. So new videos every single week. Let me know what you want to see. See you guys soon.